start. Go live, please.
Call the meeting of the Design Review Committee to order. And Esther, would you, do we want the roll call first?
We'll do the roll call.
We're going to do the roll call first and then the pledge.
Esther.
Yes.
Mic's on there.
Oh, it is on? Or no, it isn't. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
So Esther Jacobson Bates is present. Patrick Kamina.
Here?
Joey Colley.
Here.
Brian Deputy.
Here.
Jennifer Dryden Hess.
Here.
Thank you, all present.
Okay. Stand. Hands over your heart. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, thank you. Thank you, Esther. You have received a packet, I guess also just now, but a packet of the agenda for the meeting today. Are there any changes to that agenda, or?
If I may request one
Please,
change. The minutes of the 17th were not included in the packet, so we
Okay.
can defer that to the future agenda.
Okay. Yeah, and the only change I have is this is the Design Review Committee, not the Development Review Committee, but it happens. But otherwise, I think it's obvious. It seems to be a one-item agenda. But there may be people. I think there are people online. Is there anyone online that has any public? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. First, I should then with the change of the title and the deletion of the approval of the minutes of the meeting of June 17th. Are there any other changes, or is there a motion to accept this agenda as with those two amendments?
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Everybody in favor, say aye.
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 Passes 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Now, is there anybody, the next item is public comment on items not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the room or anyone online in the Zoom space who have comments on items not on this agenda?
So, Mr. Chair, we have two people with us who are not in the room. There's nobody in the room, but the two folks online are the consultants for the
Okay.
general plan update for presentation.
Okay, and they are on the agenda. So, I think that's the next item on the agenda then. The review of the general plan vision and guiding principles. And I know there's a PowerPoint presentation, other materials.
Yes.
Xenia, would you please lead this?
Yes. So first of all, thank everybody for being available here on a special design review committee meeting today to be able to move this process forward. The Gpac, the advisory committee for the general plan, consisting of 15 people, and two members of this committee who are Esther and Jennifer, have met and have developed draft vision and guidelines for the general plan. So that's the big picture kind of vision for the city of Solomon for 25 years forward. And the Gpac, as you would remember, was formed to be that sounding board of those who are highly involved in the city of Solomon to make sure that our professional consultants also get a really good feel about the vision of the city of Solomon. So that is what's presented to you today. There is a draft Word version of the vision and design and the guiding principles, and we also have with us our general plan update consultants. So we have Brent and Jim here online with us, and they will remind you again where we are in the process, walk through the vision and the guiding principles, receive your feedback, especially within your role of the design committee and the architecture and everything that's within your purview. And then we'll take that feedback, incorporate it, bring it back to Gpac, and then the plan is to have this presented to the Planning Commission and the City Council on the 23rd of August. So looking forward to the presentation and all of your feedback, of course. Brent and Jim, if you want to jump in.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. Good to be here with all of you tonight, even though remotely. I'd love to be there in person. It's always great to visit Solving, but this will have to do for now. Name is Brent Gibbons. I am the project manager for the 2040 general plan for Solving. Jim was just on the screen. That's Jim Harnish. He's the principal and owner of Minter Harnish. You'll get familiar with us if you haven't already for this overall process of the general plan. And as we work over the next, we have about a year and a half remaining on this process. So I'm gonna just share my screen and have a presentation up. I'll walk through what Xenia just touched on momentarily, then we'll get into a discussion and move on from there. So 1 second. Okay, perfect. So the purpose of the meeting with DRC tonight is basically twofold. First, I just want to remind everyone here where we are in the general plan update so far, what we've completed, where we're heading, and then walk through the Gpac recommended vision statement and guiding principles, and then get your feedback, and then discuss next steps so you're aware what to anticipate through the remainder of the calendar year on this project. So what have we done so far? Well, if you remember from the first study session back in February of this year, the general plan update process is composed of a series of phases, starting with project initiation, which kicked off back in December of 20, all the way through phase 6, which is adoption. We've wrapped up the project initiation that included a community study session back in February where we started the discussion on issues and opportunities. We did a city tour with staff, and then produced a newsletter, which is on the Plan Solving website. Phase 2 is your existing conditions and trends. We're currently actually in between phase 2 and phase 3, which is alternatives. As part of phase 2, we held another community workshop that was back in April at the Veterans Hall, and that focused on issues and opportunities. It focused on the findings from the existing conditions and trends workbook, which I'll touch on in a second, and then it started to open up the door to vision. So how does the community vision Solving over the next 20 years, looking out to the year 2040, and how can we capture that as part of this plan and really tee it up so that it meets the community's expectations moving forward. Phase 3, this will be coming up relatively soon. This is the alternatives analysis, and this is actually going to tie in with the housing element update as well, so they're going to run on a parallel track. When you think of the alternatives analysis, this usually garners the most public attention, is what I like to say. This is the part where we start to look at your land use map for Solving and start to analyze and discuss if there are any land use changes that should occur over the next 20 years. And if those land use changes do occur, that's a big if, what are the implications from those changes? What are the implications on infrastructure? What are the implications on traffic, safety? What does that do to your population, and what does that do fiscally for the community? So that is coming up this fall and into the winter. Phase 4 is the actual policy document itself, so that is the goals and policies within the general plan. Now, just to point out here, the DRC will be instrumental in this phase 4 because there's going to be a community design element. So we're taking your original community design element and we're going to update it to reflect current terminology, your architectural application, and then bring that before you with our urban designer as part of our staff. His name is Jordan Cow, and he'll work with all of you to determine what changes need to be made as part of the community design element, and then prepare new policies, new goals, new programs, and then we'll bring that forward eventually to the Planning Commission and the City Council for their approval. So that'll be a big part for DRC as part of phase 4. I wouldn't anticipate that starting until probably the first or second quarter of 22. Lastly, we round out phases 5 and 6. So 5 is your environmental review. That's your environmental impact report. That basically is a document required by California Environmental Quality Act, which will look at any impacts or significant impacts that could occur from this plan for solving in its planning area, and then provide a series of mitigation measures to offset any significant impacts that may arise. And then number 6, what we all hope for is a successful adoption at the end of the process. So I touched on the existing conditions and trends workbook. This was released back in mid-May. The existing conditions and trends workbook, I like to think of it as a snapshot of conditions and trends currently in solving. And for this purpose, we're looking at 2020, when we technically started this project, into 2021. The report covers a series of topics related to housing, fiscal responsibility, mobility, so that's your traffic and your circulation, environmental factors within the community and the overall San Ynez Valley, and then hazards and safety. These are just a few of the topics covered. The workbook is available on the Plan Solving website for public review. This will serve as the existing setting for the future environmental impact report as we move forward. And this also informs the overall policy document and the alternatives, because you can't look toward the future if you don't understand where you've been or where you're currently at. Now, just so you're aware, I know 2 of you are part of our Gpac, but the Gpac had an opportunity to review this workbook and had a series of suggested changes. We're in the process of incorporating those, and a revised version will be posted within the next few weeks.
Brett, when did you say that was going to be posted? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. In the next.
That'll be posted within the next few weeks. We'll post the updated version that incorporates all the Gpac comments and recommended modifications.
Thank you.
No problem. So community engagement. This is probably one of the biggest pillars of this entire process. Solving is an extremely engaged community. You have a lot of commissions and committees. We had great attendance at our workshops and at our study session. We have a very involved Gpac that includes some of the big movers and shakers within the community. And so we really wanted to make sure, coordinating with the city on this effort, that we did an extensive amount of community outreach. So far, we've had 2 community workshops, a series of stakeholder interviews, and then each of those workshops also included an online component. So as part of this, we compiled a community engagement summary, which was released last month. If you've had a chance to look at it, I commend you. It's 55 pages long. It's probably one of the longest that I've dealt with, but it's a lot of great information from the community on vision, expectations for the future, feedback on what issues that the general plan should highlight, what opportunities it should capitalize on. So I highly recommend, if you haven't had a chance to look at that, to view that document. It is available on the Plan Solving website, and it highlights all of the feedback that we've received so far through all 4 of these engagement items that we conducted with the city, shown here on the slide.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yeah.
Briefly, I mean, just that's great to hear that you've got a lot of feedback and lots of these comments. Did any, were there 2 or 3 particularly prominent themes that emerged from that?
Well, there were a lot of themes. I'm trying to think back. I mean, right off the top of my head, traffic probably rose to the top. I think it was the majority of it is not only how you have a highway bisecting the community, but you also have the overflow traffic that ends up cutting through neighborhoods. That was a big issue that was brought up in different ways. That how can this general plan curb that? That was a big issue. Fiscal responsibility in tourism was a big issue. Obviously, tourism is extremely important to the community, but we need to balance the residents' needs and the tourists' needs at the same time. It shouldn't be off kilter.
I understand.
So those are probably 2 of the biggest.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Okay. So that kind of just tells you where we're at now and what we've completed. Now I'm going to take a step back and talk about the Gpac. So the General Plan Advisory Committee has met at this point 3 times. And their role and responsibility is to serve as an advisory to the planning commission and the city council. So the Gpac will review deliverables, they will review different alternatives report, they're going to review policy documents before they go out, provide a recommendation based on their understanding of the community and expectations that they know. And then those recommendations will go forward to both the planning commission and council for approval and review. So the two big first items that Gpac has looked at was one was the existing conditions in the Trent Workbook. And then second is the vision statement and the guiding principles. So just to give a little background for the DRC, if you're not familiar with what a vision statement is, a vision statement is typically, it's a future ideal that a community looks toward as part of the general plan. So we'd like to have a vision statement in general plan because it allows us to align future goals and policies toward an end goal. It really anchors a plan. Typically vision statements, they're comprehensive, they're long-term, they're upbeat, they're visionary. They don't focus on necessarily how the community is now, but what the community would like to be aspirationally down the road. Vision statements are not required as part of the general plan, but typically best practice, we like to include them as part of it. It's really good to have a vision statement for your planning commission or even yourselves in the DRC and even the city council to look back at when reviewing projects to make sure that what you're reviewing aligns with the community's vision over the next 20 years, which is the horizon for this. So the Gpac went through a series of exercises at their last Gpac meeting back at the end of June. And as part of this meeting, they walked through with our consultant team the different types of vision statements that are typically included as part of the general plan, and then reviewed feedback that came from the community and the different buzzwords and keywords that community members felt describe something. And they worked collectively to pull together 3 to 4 draft vision statements. From those vision statements, those were all condensed and merged into what we're calling the Gpac recommended vision statement, which is shown here on your screen. The vision statement reads, Solvang is a unique small town in a scenic rural setting. We are a thriving tourist destination known for our quality of life, natural beauty, Danish heritage and architecture, cultural resources, and hospitality. We are a friendly, safe, inclusive, resilient, and healthy place with a strong sense of community, supporting lifelong learning where people of all ages, economic levels, and cultures live, work, play, and visit. So this vision statement really takes into part a majority of what the community stated, not only from the first community study session back in February, but even the subsequent workshop back in April. There are several buzzwords here that really describe solving, and you can tell this is aspirational. It's looking out toward the future and what the community thrives to be over the next 20 years. So what we'll do is I'll then move into the guiding principles and what the Gpac is recommending. And after we walk through those, I'll open it back up to the chair and we can facilitate a conversation about the DRC's thoughts on the Gpac recommended vision statement and guiding principles, and we'll see if there's anything that you would like to change or any other modifications.
Okay.
Questions?
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. Are there questions at this point?
Can we make more, oops. Do you want to go through it all before we begin? Any kind of suggestions to the content? Or do we do that as we go through each step? I think we've all read through it.
What I was envisioning, and I'm flexible, if it's easier for the group to stick with the vision first, we can do that, and then we can transition into the principles.
Yeah, I think that would kind of help move it along. To just kind of work on it step by step, if that would be okay.
Yeah, what I'll do, I'll back up the screen one. I'll take it back to the vision.
Okay.
And then what I'll what I'll do here is I'll open it back up to the chair to facilitate discussion on whether the GPAC recommended vision statement is shown on the screen.
Okay.
Does that meet the expectations of what the DRC is envisioning solving over the next 20 years?
Right. Okay, thank you. Well, let's do that. We don't want to get bogged down, but I think it's worthwhile we'll give this a try to see if we can, if there are comments, we want to record them. And again, we know we're not editing the vision statement tonight. What we're doing is suggesting to those that, you know, in the city government and at the Gpac, suggestions on how how the vision or the guidelines are expressed. If there are any ways in which we want to strengthen them or enhance something about them. So we've all had a chance, I think, to review these before the meeting, which is good. I appreciate that. Are there any comments about the recommended vision statement? I know Esther has one, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I distributed and I emailed to you, Zena, some comments in regards to my suggestions. And just kind of to fill in this committee, Jennifer and I are your representatives on the GPAC, and we're at the meeting. I was so amazed at what was accomplished in a 2-hour meeting. This entire document was constructed, and it really came about in large part because of the people that came in with a written statement in place, most specifically Lansing Duncan, that most of this was built off incorporating small group work. So we didn't have a lot of time, and I'm still amazed at what got done. My only suggestion in this vision statement, first paragraph, is and I think that you all have a paper copy in front of you, deleting supporting lifelong learning and instead incorporating learn in the last sentence after cultures and cultures live, learn, work, play, and visit. So just kind of incorporating it in a different form. That's my only comment there.
Yeah, and I'm going to jump in because that was my passion words, were supporting lifelong learning. And we tried to get it in, and then it had been bothering me this whole time. And I tried to wordsmith it, and then Esther came up with the brilliant just learn. So I'm fully supportive because I wanted to get that in, and you did it in my mind, an elegant way. So I'm happy with it.
I agree with that. It was that part of the sentence, supporting lifelong learning. Like, I got it, but I also sort of thought this doesn't quite flow or something,
Right.
and what is it trying to say? And I think the one, as
Yeah.
you said, the one switch of just the word learn, that makes a lot more sense.
Any other, Brian, any comments?
No.
Should we read that paragraph as you suggested it in full, or?
Or maybe just the last
Just
sentence.
that last sentence, sure.
Sure.
Go.
Would you like me to go ahead
Yeah,
and read
yeah,
it?
go ahead and do that, Esther,
Um,
sure.
So the third sentence, the last sentence in the vision statement, we are a friendly, safe, inclusive, resilient, and healthy place with a strong sense of community where people of all ages, economics, and cultures live, learn, work, play, and visit.
Okay. That's a good suggestion. I have a couple comments, and again, I think it may be a sort of a style issue more than anything, because as a vision statement, it's what we expect, as I understand it, it's what we expect this town, the city, to be like in 20 years. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, and so it starts off, Solvang is a unique town. Then it says, at the, beginning the rest of the next two sentences, we are. And I don't know if it's a small thing, but I think the vision statement relates to the city or Solvang, not the we. I think it is, that it is. Rather than describing us, that is the residents as a group, and that's what we're setting, I'm talking about the community or the city of Solvang is what the vision statement relates to. So I would have said, I mean, given that, I would have said rather than we are, I would say it is. It is, a friendly, rather than we are.
I think the context for that from, Jennifer and I, at least for me, is that we were given examples and it did
Yep.
make it personal in that sense. And I think either way is fine. If that's gonna be changed, that does speak to continuing that.
Right, no, I mean, I've done it,
Throughout.
I've done it as I go down that also, where it says, we are, or we welcome visitors, but again, it's, like I say, I'm sure there's good reasons, that the people that really do this for a living and have already gone through this, do it that way. But
Well,
it's just, and looking at it fresh eyes before your presentation is just seeing, if it's a vision statement for the city, I don't think it's a vision statement for the community of residents. There's a difference, I think. Maybe there isn't a difference.
Well, and maybe Brett can speak to that, or Zena, because that does, it's the same and yet it's different. Is it about the people or is it about the place?
Yeah, and then this is a comment, obviously, that extends to all of the guiding principles, where they all
Yes.
begin with we.
Right. So I can jump in here. As Esther had touched on, there are several stylistic approaches to creating a vision statement. With this one, I unfortunately was not at the meeting that the Gpac drafted the vision statement and guiding principles. But the intent was to have this be community driven by the people, by community members. So there was a particular emphasis as part of this vision statement
Right.
to really hone in on the we. It does take a slightly different tone. Obviously, you can tell the first sentence encompasses the city in itself, and then it shifts to the community members.
Right.
There's no right or wrong as part of this process. You can take the we are and switch it to an it is. It'll just shift it to like a municipality as a whole, and less focus on the individual citizen.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a little tweak, I know, and this is not a big deal, but it just seems like it shifted gears, because you're talking about Solvang is a unique a community, or whatever, small town. We are, and it's just real small. It's a nit, really, but that was my reaction to it. So I'll let that lay there. The other thing I had, because it's in our design review standards, and that is I have traditional Danish heritage architecture. Not Danish architecture, believe me. That can mean lots of things. It's very different from what we are and what we want to be in 20 years. I think we want to continue to, and traditional, and I know heritage is there, but the traditional is a term that's used in the design standards, and I'd like to recapture that sort of on behalf of this committee, right before the word Danish. Traditional Danish.
Well, traditional doesn't fit in front of heritage, but it fits in front of architecture, so.
Yeah, maybe that ought to be, maybe there's different ways to do it, or traditional architecture, I'm not,
Well,
but I think it's,
I think that,
I think the heritage, I think it is also heritage, I think also refers to the traditional, the historic.
And, it's interesting that you bring that up, Pat, because I'm the one who pushed to include architecture there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because of our role here on this committee.
Right.
And how many times we've been challenged in our, interactions and decision-making by that. So there was some thought that architecture didn't belong
Yeah,
there.
and obviously, I disagree with that strongly, but I just think, I don't want, those that come after us in 10 years to say, they said Danish architecture.
Well, we can
And
do,
have that mean,
what about,
chrome and glass.
how about something like Danish heritage and old world architecture?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, something like that. But anyway, I think that's,
It's a very good clarification, though. Thank you for bringing that up,
Okay.
because that really makes a difference on how we treat projects going forward.
Okay.
This is for 20 years.
Yeah. That's really the only comments I have on this.
Yeah, I have one, I don't know if it's more of just an observation, but when I think of vision, I think of, maybe it's a tense change, but this is saying this is what we are currently. And Patrick kind of made me think, if you're reading through this, it's not, here's where we project ourselves in the future. Here's what we are. We're this, and this. Maybe just a word or two to say, and we continue forward with these goals to,
Well, I think
to
that
become.
This is descriptive of the
this
town in
is
20 years.
pretending we're in 2040.
Yeah.
So this
it's
is as
not-
though it's
yeah.
2040.
Right.
If
Oh,
I
I missed
understand
that part.
correctly,
Okay.
Yeah.
am I understanding that correctly, Brett?
You are, and this actually touches on it. There's two ways you can look at this. So the way that this is framed is, this is reading as you are already there in 2040. We are this, we are this. The flip side is you could say, we will be, that's forward looking. We will be a thriving tourist destination. We will be a friendly state. So you're right, there's two different distinctions. This is definitely looking at this is 2040 and this is what we are.
I like that. I like the statement.
Yeah, I get it now. Okay.
As
Yeah.
expressed in 20, and it basically says what we've accomplished.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments on vision statement? Good comments, good conversation. Plugged in. Good conversation, sorry.
I would like to go back though, because I think your comment about we versus the city, the people versus the place is kind of how I interpret it. I think that as a committee, we kind of need to embrace one way or the other, because our comments from this point and going forward are gonna be based upon either the way it is or the way, like I said, either on the people or the place. And we need to be consistent. So right now, it's written as though it's the people, and I think that was purposeful.
I agree. I think that the sense of community around the ownership of what we want to be as a community is why it's written that way. It feels more like how we behave, right? Like it's the culture is wrapped into the town. So it's like, to me, it's intrinsically speaks to how involved this community really is in its blossoming, if you like, for lack of a better word. But it's, to me, it actually evokes that sense of involvement that you don't see if you read some of the other vision statements that we saw as examples, which obviously you guys didn't get the benefit of doing that. But I felt like it speaks to the culture of the community.
And again, I think it was very purposefully done from the perspective of, this is our community talking about what we want for all of us and for, the
Right.
future of our community, rather than our advisors, saying, and in fact, that goes back to the comments about the changes to the existing trends. That it was great the way it was put together, but it was put together by an outside group, and our local group made the comments to incorporate what we considered to be really important into that, and I think that's where this perspective came from.
Right, I understand, and I think it's a choice to be made. I understand the choice being made. I don't know.
Okay,
Just,
I just think it'll help inform us as we go through guiding principles.
Yeah.
I'll just comment, I can sort of imagine, a video or a commercial or something where this vision statement is being spoken, and I sort of imagine different members of the community, kids, people, so in that case, like you were saying, it does sort of represent the we are. It would be a much different thing if it was scenes of just the city and one person speaking it, so I'm in agreement with all the.
Okay,
how I vision it.
Okay. Okay, good. Good discussion, and I appreciate that. Guiding principles, if we're ready to move on.
Okay, just before we move on, I just want to clarify some of these changes. So we're in agreement. What the plan is that we will provide these recommended changes to the Gpac for their consideration before it moves on up to planning commission. So
Understood.
the recommended changes is to remove in the third sentence the reference to lifelong learning, instead inserting the word learn after where it says and cultures live, comma, it would say learn, comma, work. And then in the second sentence, where it says Danish heritage, it would say Danish heritage and old world architecture.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, great.
perfect.
Thank you.
Okay. So, guiding principles. So in following a vision statement, we have a set of guiding principles. And the way I like to think about these and explain them is this is like the spine. It's the central ideas and themes that are incorporated into the general plan. These are the next step from the vision. So from the vision is that hierarchy, that 30,000 foot level. Then you have the guiding principles, which are the next step down. And that eventually will feed into the general plan's goals, policies, and programs. So these guiding principles provide a framework for where the plan will go and where all the land use decisions will go as part of this greater effort. So working with the Gpac, again, at this last meeting, the Gpac worked through a series of guiding principles that established solving's expectations for future growth and future potential, and then also tied back to the vision statement that we all just saw on the screen. So I think just for ease, I'm going to go slide by slide. There's 3 guiding principles per slide, and we can walk through each of those. If there's any recommended edits or wordsmithing, I'm taking notes. I know city staff is taking notes, so we can definitely make sure that we cover any of that. I think that'll just be more efficient rather than going through all 12 of them at once.
Okay? Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first 3 are called heritage and identity, the village, and economic vitality. So I don't think I necessarily need to read through these, but I'll leave these up on the screen. I know several of you had the opportunity to review these ahead of time. And the way, again, I like to think about these guiding principles is they're going to tee up the eventual goals, policies, and programs as part of this effort. So think of it as the spine of the dome.
I have saw the same thing that Esther did in the last line of that. Proceeded, I think, should be preceded. Just a misspelling. So should that by those who preceded our founders, and then I would, sort of consistent with that, and their successors. That is essentially those who followed them.
I put those.
Yeah.
I put those who preceded and followed our founders, but by those who preceded our founders and their successors. I also recommended in the first line, we welcome visitors while maintaining our small town character and honoring our multicultural heritage.
Yeah, I did make again, I'm compulsive, but I did make a small addition to that, talking about the multicultural heritage of its residents, rather than just multicultural. But it is.
I think there was a reason that we left it at heritage, because of the, the Danes came after the mission was founded, after this, the Mexicans and the Spaniards and the Chumash.
Right.
And there's probably all of those cultures present here, but we just kind of left it at the heritage, so that it encompassed those, even if there aren't residents with those,
Well, it
that
was
are-
also to encompass the visitors of all multicultural, so not just, so it was more inclusive of the communities of people that visit as well.
yeah.
Or drive in to work here too, which is another component.
Sorry if I can just interrupt. If you can all remember to please turn on your mics and speak into your mics.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you.
Because Brett wants to know.
You guys, you all talk pretty loud. I think you do pretty good.
Thank goodness David's mic is on. I have no other comments on that part. Do you want to go on, or do you have any other?
None here.
I'm
No,
sorry.
I don't really have anything else with.
Nothing for me.
So the group is okay with the three on the screen with the modifications of preceded, ending with and their successors, and then inserting and before the word honoring.
I do have some comments on the village.
Okay.
The village is a small, charming, safe, and walkable environment. Model on a Danish village that attracts, not that can attract, that attracts visitors.
Yeah, I like those, I like both of those changes, yeah.
I would ask, is it necessary to also, make more of a distinction about the old world Danish village versus just Danish village, or some variation, whether it's the 18th century or,
I think it's useful to repeat that notion.
because the village really is what we're charged with,
Protecting,
upholding for
yeah.
the most, more than any other part of the city. So from a design standpoint, I would think that would be important to include. Whether old world is the term or not, I don't know if we're repeating it too much, maybe there's a different way to word it, but.
Well, and I think that, if I understand, this is going back to Gpac, going to planning, going to city, so
Right.
there's nothing wrong with putting it in,
Sure.
then they can take it out or
Right.
find a better word.
Right.
So, it's a good distinction.
I agree.
Again, sitting from this
Yeah, I agree.
angle,
Good.
yeah, nice catch, Joy.
Was the idea to put old world in front of Danish or in front of village?
I think in front of
Front-
Danish.
Yeah.
Yes, in front of
Exactly,
Danish.
yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Do you want me to go on to economic
Yes,
vitality?
yes, please, go.
Yep.
Okay, our resilient, diverse, and sustainable economy supports both existing and new, rather new and existing. So we want to support the existing and new locally owned businesses, including community-supported tourism. And then I flipped the other part around too. It says visitors and residents. I say it should be residents and visitors continue to enjoy the services of a healthy business environment.
Yeah.
So just kind of a couple of tweaks there.
I
Why
agree with
did you
this.
flip, why did you flip residents and visitors? What was your thinking? Why?
Because we are thinking here often in the form of the village area, which is very visitor-centric and tourist-centric. But there's also a lot more business in the area outside of the village area. And I think that we're often focusing on the tourism, and I wanted to not have that be, I wanted the residential part to
Got
come
it.
ahead there.
Okay.
And hopefully, hopefully in 20 years from my perspective, there'll be more of a mix
Yeah.
in the downtown area, so that does serve, the residents come in for more activities or
Services.
commerce,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like the switch also, the new and existing, the existing and new. Not that we would have preference over older businesses and newer businesses either way, but it does feel like, okay, here we are with what we have, our existing businesses, our bread and butter, and welcoming the new in. So it's sort of giving priority to the existing without giving priority. So I like that change.
I agree with both those, for sure.
And the only thing I stumbled on it with this, and I was, it says community, it says locally owned businesses. Does that mean that you're not going to support businesses that are owned by people outside the community? And I know, I mean, and frankly, to some extent, yeah, that's why there's no McDonald's, and whatever. But that's, you know, is it limited to locally owned businesses?
Would a better way to word it be local businesses? I mean, because that is kind of what we're saying, right, is supporting local businesses. I agree, locally owned does sort of sound exclusive, right?
Yeah, I think the intent was a little bit like Pat, you just mentioned, that, you know, it kind of wanting to really focus on continuing that kind of mom and pop type business as opposed to corporate franchises
Yeah.
and that type of thing. So you kind of that small business owners. But maybe just saying existing and new local businesses. But that's, they would obviously be local businesses
Yeah,
if they're operating in Solvang.
right.
I guess again, it goes to the fact that, you know, it can be a business that is operated locally, but not owned locally. You know, so I think that they were really trying to emphasize that. You know, the business owners be part of the community. And that was kind of specifically put in there.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure that, you know, we thought through to be sure that it didn't misrepresent that we're not interested in,
Exclusionary.
or that we're
Right.
excluding those.
It does read that.
It does.
Yeah,
It does. And it was done by, that wording came from our local business community members that
Yeah.
were on Gpac, and I
Yeah.
understand why.
Yeah.
But is that narrow, as we look 20 years?
but you want to create an environment in which locally owned businesses can thrive. There's
Right.
no question about that. I just stumble if it means that to the exclusion of others. And another small ad in the same paragraph, I'm moving ahead, I know we haven't finally settled on that last item necessarily, but it says to enjoy the services of a healthy business environment. And I would just Econ 101, I'd say goods and services.
So it would be to enjoy
Well, I
goods
mean,
and
you know,
services.
Yeah,
it's goods and services, it's
Yeah.
not just
Yep.
services,
Yeah,
I agree.
that's all.
that's
Yeah.
a good one.
Good call.
I wonder if, rather than trying to solve for that, just highlighting that we raised it as an issue potentially, and maybe just leaving a note
On the
saying,
locally owned.
yeah, and
Yeah.
just
I think
saying,
that's a fair.
we just maybe think it might be too exclusionary. We don't have a solution for it tonight, but
Yeah, I think
it's-
that's a great,
right.
I think that's a great approach.
Yeah, especially if it's going back to.
yeah, because
all these
someone
other-
else
yeah.
might have a better idea.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an
Yeah.
excellent, and I think adding, that services thing, I hadn't found the solution, but, because it was kind of bothering me, that was a good call. I have no further comments on
Okay.
the first three.
Yeah, that does it for me too.
Okay, perfect. We got all those changes down. So the next three, cover the discussion of neighborhoods and their importance of cultural resources, and then lastly, natural environment.
I have a comment on the neighborhoods, kind of like what we just said. I'm not sure I really have a solution, but it doesn't fully describe to me what I think of when I think of our neighborhoods. In some ways, I think our neighborhoods are an extension of the village and the town itself. This is just kind of saying, you know, we want to keep our neighborhoods sort of separate, which we do as residents, I think. But there still is kind of a badge of honor to be, you know, a resident of Solvang and an extension of, you know, the Danish community and all that. So I'm not sure I really have a suggestion on wording that, but it just felt a little bit like a sort of a short sentence without really expressing completely, I don't know, representing fully what the neighborhoods mean.
Well, and to me, the diversity of the neighborhoods
Right.
was kind of what I was missing in that. And it was a visionary statement, because we certainly know that our neighborhoods are not buffered from the impacts of traffic, overflow, visitor parking, and events at this time. And everybody acknowledged that that was part of the vision for the future. But perhaps this is another one where we might turn it back to the other groups to revisit this and think about adding something that was a little bit more representative of the diversity of our neighborhoods. Does that sound right?
Totally, yeah, and in fact, the use of the word diversity would be welcome in my mind. In fact, it could be included in a handful
Yeah.
of places on this document.
Right.
Because certainly we are a diverse community, and I think we want to always be inclusive of diverse visitors.
Maybe we
and-
should just say our diverse residential neighborhoods
Sure.
right there.
Yeah, I think that's good.
That's good. Yep. And that's certainly accurate now as well.
Mhm.
Cultural resources, I think it encompassed what the group intended, but was very rough in its wording with and. I added one word and took out several ands in my rewording. Would you like me to read that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Residents and visitors value the unique character of our historic and cultural assets. The downtown Danish village, museums, art venues, and theaters provide educational, social, and emotional richness. So I just added the word social into richness, but then kind of reorganized it.
I like breaking it into two sentences like that.
That's what I was going to say too.
I actually, believe it or not, after I did this before, actually at home, before the meeting, and not immediately after the last discussion, but I had residents and visitors value its many diverse historic and cultural assets. So I have put in diversity there. Okay.
I don't disagree with the use of that word by any means.
But I like Esther's rewording of that language and cultural resources.
Brent, you got that language?
It would be beneficial, Zena, if we can get a copy of that verbiage verbatim. I was writing as quick as I can, but I want to make sure that I get it precisely.
Yeah, I emailed it to Zena, so she's got it.
Thank you, Esther.
I really liked the natural
I did too.
environment one.
I did too.
I have
That was one of the best ones.
Yeah, think so too, and the addition of the challenge of a changing climate
That was my
is an
favorite part.
important aspect of that, I think, as well.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that the rivers, it was one of my favorites.
Yep, I agree.
Any other recommended changes before we move to the next set?
No?
Nope.
No,
No,
None.
So the next three, these focus on mobility and access, so circulation is part of this. Regional cooperation, this is realizing that Solvang is part of a greater region, the Scandinavian Valley. And then the last one focuses on infrastructure.
I like the use in mobility and access of the sustainable multimodal transportation. We're always talking about transportation here, and we know there's a lack of sort of public transportation as well as things like bike paths and things like that. So I personally like the idea of including that.
See, the only thing that made this read rough to me was there's an adjective in front of everything except trails. So I don't know, doesn't really matter. It's just kind of, you know, safe and accessible streets, trails. Because it makes me think that means safe and accessible trails, but I don't know if that was necessarily the intent.
Trying to think of a word that would.
I know,
word to
I
put
couldn't
in
come
front
up
of
I
with
it.
that.
wonder
That's-
if it should be though, more to the idea of the biking and walking trails.
Sure.
I think that the multimodal transportation options was specifically stated to include bicycles.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about safe and accessible streets and trails? Then-
Well, then it's
And-
Yeah, that's
and,
another
yeah,
and.
yeah,
Trying to
so that's
reduce-
why,
Yeah,
it's not
right.
a big deal, it's just,
Yep.
yeah. I couldn't think of one, so I just,
Yeah, I didn't have any changes on that.
green trails.
Yeah.
I only have one comment on infrastructure. Nothing on regional cooperation. Solving and maintains A is sustainable. I just take out the A in there was my only comment.
On which one?
Infrastructure,
Oh, okay.
solving and maintains sustainable, efficient,
Yeah.
equitable, site appropriate, resilient infrastructure, public
Mhm.
amenities. Then it kind of flows.
You're right.
Esther, it looks like on your on regional cooperation, you do have a couple of just like,
Oh, I do have
grammar,
one,
spelling.
yeah. Sorry,
No, it's,
I didn't even catch
yeah,
that.
and-
Did I? Regional cooperation, provided by regional planning and partnership is what it is now. I wanted to make that plural, partnerships.
Okay.
To support the quality of life and safety of residents, and I suggested a comma after that, and the experience of visitors.
So
Again,
I
with
did-
lots
I
of
had-
commas.
Yeah, in infrastructure and amenities, I had different, placement of comma.
Jennifer, do you have your mic on?
Yeah, it's on, sorry. I had to do, in infrastructure and amenities, maybe you guys think it's, I don't know, but I had it like this, I like that you took out the A, but solving, maintains sustainable, comma, efficient, comma, equitable, comma, site appropriate, and resilient infrastructure, comma, so that site appropriate, comma, is gone, and public amenities, so it's just to me, it was a misplaced comma, but.
It's certainly easier to comprehend the intent that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the second sentence, we prioritize conserving all natural resources. I wanted to add all.
yeah, that's a good add.
Mhm.
Good add.
So the comma that you were seeking to move was after site appropriate.
Correct, and move it to after infrastructure.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments on the three guiding principles before us on the board? So
Nope.
you have three more?
Three more. This is
Final
the
three.
Last three. Okay. So these last three focus on services that are provided to community members and residents. Emphasis on jobs and housing. And then finally, good governance.
I have no comments.
I feel like just a little bit more emphasis on affordable housing somehow, like even just a wide range of affordable housing
Yeah.
options, or, because that, I do think is one of our biggest challenges here.
Agreed.
Not just affordable housing, but housing, period.
You know what, that's a good point, because it
I
doesn't address here anything except affordable housing
Right,
options. So
right.
I think that needs to be expanded, you're right.
So are you saying just add a wide?
Either,
Because
I was
that,
thinking a wide range of affordable housing options, but that doesn't really then include housing in general, right? So I'm not sure how to word it, to include both, but I just think there could be some expansion to that statement that includes.
And this will focus really the discussion of the policy and how that's shaped in a document, which will then guide all of our work going forward, so.
Right, yeah.
yeah, it seems a little lacking there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does.
So I think what I'm saying is I don't necessarily have an exact verbiage, but I do think it's worth just revisiting by all the parties who are gonna be looking at this moving forward.
Yeah.
Also, addressing potentially a range of density in housing too, from, multifamily and, multi,
Yeah, that's a very
to
good point.
single-family housing and,
Mhm.
Yeah, that's right. I think as the city council learns though, I mean, its degrees of freedom are limited because of the state's, preempted a lot of things the city can do in that area. But anyway, I think the points are well made. I mean, affordable housing, yes, but also the other issues relating to housing.
Maybe the word available housing options, or,
Yeah.
that might not be exactly right, and it may not fit with ultimately, but there is such a lack that it does.
Well,
seem like,
it's
what's
again, the
available.
word diverse is suggests that, that there should be an array of housing options or a diversity of housing options or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And again, diversity sometimes triggers
the
other things.
Gpac has people who are in the real estate industry too.
Mhm.
So I think that
Yeah.
they'll have some language to
Yeah.
help sharpen this up. Because it seems, those are great things that it has listed there,
Sure.
but that's incomplete, it seems.
Well, on that point too, great points on housing, but then jobs, it's a little vague to me about living wage jobs provided for high quality. Does that mean bringing in new big businesses to hire people, or does it mean increasing wages? I don't get that one, really, that part. It's a little bit.
I would say that, right now, a lot of people are talking about living wage, right, and whether minimum wage is high enough and all of those things, and I know as a business owner, I try to, in my heart, think about what is a living wage for my employees. But yeah, you're right, that is sort of vague, and what does that exactly mean? Because a living wage here is a lot different than a living wage somewhere else.
So
And
true.
that kind of goes back to that affordable housing and all that, it's sort of tied in together,
Yeah.
I don't really have any suggestions on how to fix it or reword it, but, I do think it's important to mention living wage, because that really is kind of the point of importance, I think, especially right now.
Well, and you think about some communities where their emphasis is on, a tech jobs or whatever it may be. It's very hard for me to, get my head around what 20 years from now looks like,
Right.
especially when we think about, 20 years ago, we didn't have the internet the way we do
Sure.
now, and how our world has evolved. Again, I totally think you all have a great point, that what we have here is good, but it's incomplete.
Right.
And the jobs thing is like the housing thing, it seems
Right.
like.
Yeah.
This is important to include, but it needs to be broadened to include more than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what does it mean? That's all.
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
like the high quality of life, that's a very positive way
I
to
like it.
hope for things to be in 20 years, and now, of course, I like that, and
It doesn't also speak, necessarily to how it's planned. Like, is it a well-planned community, or is it is there any kind of thought or design thoughtfulness into that as well? Or is it just a kind of a free-for-all
Right.
around, right, the housing?
Yeah.
Hard to tell.
Well, no, it's just, it gets me thinking, yeah, that we can't make it, maybe we're a little tired and by this time we kind of like.
I know, it seems kind of incomplete, doesn't it?
Yeah, right, like, sort of
What's the
think,
matter
yeah,
with
that's
you
good,
people?
and then,
Yeah.
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 Well, I will point out that I've been taking notes of all of the different words and varieties and terms and phrases that you know, the DRC feels would be important to include. And even though there's not necessarily a recommended text change as part of this, I think there's a lot of verbiage that could be added. So when we provide a summary to the Gpac, I will list all that for their consideration so they can see everything that all of you brought.
Great, thanks,
Okay.
Brett.
I would make one more comment on resident services. We kind of passed over that. And it's just a positive comment that I really like the statement, a diverse and multi-generational community. Because
Yep.
no doubt the generations of this town have been really important, you know, and continue to be. And again, I don't think we can use the word diverse or diversity enough. So anyway, I just happen to like that sentence.
Thank you, and we were trying to look at seniors too.
Mhm.
Right,
And
yeah.
but no, that's ended up being kind of to the exclusion of others, and that's when the multi-generational
Yeah.
was
I
incorporated.
think it's a perfect way to say it because really, everybody counts, right?
Right.
Yeah, and right now, our community is kind of skewing towards the older end of the demographics bracket, but,
I
again.
resemble that.
Yeah.
Me too.
But of course, that can't sustain a community, so we hope
Sure.
that, it is growing on all age levels.
Sure.
Okay. Any comments on the good governance?
I would say one thing that I would consider adding would be sort of equal protection of the law or the codes, and maybe, I mean, really equitable probably covers that, but I've always felt sometimes it can be difficult when you have enforcement, say, of an ordinance, you know, on one person or business owner or homeowner or something, and because there's no complaint that the other guy's doing it, that doesn't really get followed up on, and it feels like unequal protection of the law, especially if somebody is a minority or you know, something like that. So again, I don't really have a suggestion as to verbiage, but I do think that's important to sort of, and again, maybe it falls under equitable, you know, that might really just contain
I
that.
think, I mean, my sense is, I think it is equitable, although I'm open to more, but I think that's an
Sure.
issue. You know, I think it, you know, where I see the issues is in enforcement. You know,
Right,
or, you know,
yeah.
where, you know, there are a lot of people, they're given directions or orders and they do it, and then others don't do it, and, you know, the consequences are, you know, that are contemplated.
What about,
Aren't administered, and I think that creates a disparity and undermines confidence in things.
what if we made it fair and equitable?
I was just gonna say fair.
And just
something.
maybe change the order so it's not and in there, but
Yeah,
making it fair and equitable, and
responsive and, you know,
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
transparent, supportive, or transparent, collaborative, fair and equitable, supportive and responsive, something like that.
mhm.
That's great.
I like that.
Yeah, I like it a
But
lot too.
like that was a really good
Yeah.
comment, because that equitable thing, if it's not done, you know, fairly, it isn't equitable.
Yeah, right.
Very
Can't
good.
have one without the other.
Okay, any more comments on these last three?
None for me.
None?
No?
Great.
Okay,
So I'm gonna just buzz by 3 slides because we just walked through the entire discussion. So go by as you
Okay.
please. So briefly, and this will conclude the presentation. I'll hand it back to the chair. I just wanted to go over final next steps. So what Olive is doing is I'll work with city staff to pull together a summary of tonight's comments and modifications. We'll show those and track changes, so when the Gpac reconvenes, they'll see what it would look like if the changes were implemented. based on DRC's recommendation. Gpac at its next meeting will review that, decide what they want to pull forward, and work as their final recommendation to the planning commission, and then so forth. The planning commission will make the recommendation with the city council at the joint study session now scheduled for August 23rd. At this time, toward the beginning of August, we're going to start the initial evaluation of the alternatives. We'll be coordinating with the Gpac on expectations for potential land use changes, with the legal policy changes, and that'll tee up a future alternative report. And we'll also tee up the third and final workshop of the general plan update, which is going to be focused on land use alternatives. And it's also going to bring in the housing element process in that, because the housing sites inventory as part of the housing element coincides with the land use alternative when we're starting to look at appropriate areas for new or expanded uses within the community. Tentatively, that community workshop was scheduled for early November at this point, but once we iron out some more details with city staff, we'll be able to provide a firm date for that. And that will round out how about the rest of 2021. Looking forward into 22, we'll start the policy document, and then later next year we'll get into the environmental impact report. So I appreciate everybody sticking with this and the feedback, and I'll hand it back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your efforts on this and your associates. We appreciate it, and look forward to having this make a big impact on what is already a great community.
Yeah.
We want to build on the successes that others have had here. Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brent and Jim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice evening.
Great, thanks everybody for your comments. I'm just going down the items on the agenda. Committee member comments. I think city staff, none? City staff comments, you may have a couple things.
City staff comments are just, there is included a design review committee calendar for the hearings in the packet. We'll include that again with the next agenda when we talk more about your business as usual items. And I will be, as we mentioned, the next scheduled meeting, that's the public, open to the public meeting, definitely invite everybody to participate in it, will be the meeting of the Planning Commission and the City Council on August 23rd. So that will be the final review by those two, by Council and Planning Commission, of all of the input that has been received, all of the work that has been done over the 6 months, all of the work that Gpac has put in here, all of your comments, and that will be the ask of them to actually approve and adopt this vision, which will then guide us for the next 20 years, which is obviously very important for the community, also is important for us as staff, as that really clearly defines how we prioritize different projects and help the community get to their vision. So look forward to that. Once again, if you spread the word, public participation is definitely welcome at that one. And then
What time on the 23rd? Is it just regular
so
city
it
council?
would be basically Planning Commission will be joining the City Council for that one item at the beginning of the agenda. So it will start at 6:30. We'll have both in-person participation. Right now we are completely in hybrid mode. Masks or face coverings, I should say, are no longer required if you're vaccinated. Otherwise, we do request that people wear a face covering. And we'll continue to have the hybrid participation by Zoom for those who can join us more easily that way. So we look forward to everybody's comments. It's a very important statement. And look forward to seeing all of you on August 19th for your next regular scheduled meeting.
Okay, yeah. Thank you all for the conversations tonight. I thought it was great, and I think we made positive and important contributions to this framework document. I especially want to thank Esther and Jennifer for your efforts on the committee. That's terrific. I think we are very well represented, and I'm so pleased with all your efforts on this. Thanks so much.
I do have a couple
Please.
questions.
Yeah, of
I just
course.
wanted to ask real quick.
Oh, yeah.
The 539 Alisal Color Special Meeting that Brian and I were assigned to, is still pending? Do you have any information on that for
Yeah,
us?
the applicant had essentially asked for an extension, but we are working with him. So I'll meet with him and have some clarifications on the process and the history, and then we'll coordinate and set up a meeting for the subcommittee.
Okay, so it's coming, but we
It's
don't know.
coming. I think that it will probably come back to you by August 19th.
Okay.
And will we be meeting with the applicant himself or his contractor?
I believe it's with the applicant himself.
Okay.
Interesting.
And then I just had one other comment. If you could, and David knows because I asked this, there's the Copenhagen closure survey. I would love it if you could send it out to everybody, your big list again with an active link because the link wasn't active. And I gotta admit, you sent me the thing and said it, because you can copy and paste, and I never quite finished. So I remembered that tonight. So if you want to send, because that deadline's coming up, I think, pretty quick to be included, isn't it?
Well, no, actually, that survey will continue to run longer. It's been distributed by email to all of the businesses as a business community survey. Actually, paper copies have also been walked to the businesses or are being walked to the businesses that are specifically within those 2 blocks of Copenhagen to get an additional layer and sample of those businesses. And then it was also emailed to all of our utility billing customers and those who have signed up for the plan solving any notifications. That's about 1,200 customers. So I wanted to make sure that those who don't check their emails as often can be included as well. So with the next utility billing, we'll include a message, just alerting people that here's an option to fill out the survey. And if those who don't want to use the internet, we can even have an option here at City Hall for them to come in and fill out the survey as well. So there will be an update going to council on Monday with just the results to date as kind of a preliminary preview, but it will come back to the council for decision making in August.
Okay.
I
So
would
it will
just
run a
note
little longer.
I did receive both for the business and residential, and it was easy to
Good.
respond. And,
All right.
Yeah.
I got it.
Sorry, only one complaining.
The next meeting is the 19th.
Then-
Yeah,
Correct.
Okay.
3rd Thursday.
Anything more for the good of the?
No.
No,